Greetings, friends, and welcome to tonight's Maundy Thursday worship. We're obviously not able to do what we had intended to do for Maundy Thursday by being together in person. We had planned for this to be an interactive service where we actually had different stations set up in the sanctuary, and you would be able to go and interact at each of these stations and be able to experience what that Thursday night in Holy Week, Jesus' final week before facing death, would have been like. Instead, we're going to be giving you kind of a sneak peek into the creativity of Doug Heflin and myself as we explore a different way to be invited into the experience of Jesus and his followers on Maundy Thursday. I hope that you will experience the power and the love of God through Jesus Christ as we experience worship in this way tonight. So Doug, we're not going to be able to do Maundy Thursday like we would normally do Maundy Thursday. We're not going to have people in the room with us.
That's what I understand.
So what can we do that's going to really help to have our folks understand what really happened on that night? Because I think we can do it maybe in a different way than we've thought about doing it before.
That's interesting. When I was a child, my two brothers and my mom and dad and I all went to the Gettysburg battle site. And we had all known about the Gettysburg battle in 1863 and all that. And I went over and I tried to lift a cannonball. And I couldn't even budge it.
Those things are heavy.
They're really heavy. At that exact moment in time, I realized that my perception of history and what history really was needed to be connected somehow. I was wondering what would happen if we did something like that with Maundy Thursday.
So connecting the history of what actually took place in a way that helps it come alive.
To help us understand better what's going on. You know that everybody at the Last Supper had experienced the Passover meal all the way through their childhood.
Right. And yeah, I wonder, so much of the time what we do when we talk about Holy Week is we focus on Jesus. And of course it's appropriate to focus on Jesus because he died for us. But what about the perspective of the disciples? What were they going through?
Well, they had just experienced Palm Sunday, and here Jesus was, and everyone is celebrating this beautiful entrance into Jerusalem, and this was a great celebration. But what they would have felt after experiencing communion for the first time and seeing Jesus, it would have been an overwhelming experience.
Yeah. And sometimes we talk about Peter because there's a lot of attention given to him and what Jesus predicted that Peter was going to deny him. But do you think the other disciples were also dealing with the same things, even though we don't hear about them in the scriptures as much as Peter?
They had to have.
I would think so.
They would have to have experienced, all in unique ways, but they had to have had some connecting tissue in there, something where they were all overwhelmed at the significance of the event. You're right.
Yeah.
And maybe if we had that perception, that perspective, we could start to see the events of Maundy Thursday come to life.
So, Philip, Bartholomew, these are two guys that are mentioned, but we don't hear a lot about them. What do you suppose they were thinking?
Wow. At first I would have thought that maybe they would be speechless, like in all of what's going on.
That's possible. I wonder, what were they thinking?
I have wanted so much to eat this Passover meal with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will never eat it until it is given its full meaning in the kingdom of God. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who bringeth forth fruit from the vine, Take this and share it among yourselves. For I say unto you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who bringeth forth bread from the earth. This is my body, which is given for you. This do in remembrance of me. This cup is the New Testament in my blood, which is shed for you. But behold, the hand of him that betrayeth me is with me on the table. And truly the Son of Man must die as God has determined, but woe unto that man by whom he is betrayed.
It can't be. It can't be. Not possible. Name the traitor, Lord.
Pray that you may not enter into temptation. Why are you sleeping? Get up and pray that you do not fall into temptation. Judas. Is it with a kiss that you betray the Son of Man?
Lord, shall we smite with the sword?
Come on, arrest him.
Enough of this.
You have to come with swords and clubs as though I were an outlaw. I was with you every day in the temple and you did not try to arrest me. But this is your hour to act, when the power of darkness rules.
Come on, quickly, let's go.
Arrest him.
Philip!
Did anybody see you?
No, nobody saw me. I thought they were. I was running through the streets. No one saw me.
I can't believe this.
I don't even know what to say.
I mean, just 6 days ago, when we came to Jerusalem, and the whole crowd was with Jesus.
And they were waving the palm branches, and it was a celebration. It was like the most amazing thing I had ever seen, that this could last forever.
I knew that Jesus was going to change everything, but instead, It's all been changed on us.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Like I said, six days ago, it was just all set out for us. We are following the Son of God, and people are being transformed, and now we're running for our lives. So I remember when I was younger, we would start the preparations early in the morning. I mean, that's almost 24 hours ago. And the preparations, we would slaughter the lamb and we'd prepare the coals and we would start the cooking. It smelled, Passover smells just overwhelmingly beautiful.
It does.
Just every time. I just can't believe we're running for our lives right now. I keep looking over my shoulder.
Yes. Yes. So Doug, thinking about the coming together for the Last Supper, and John's Gospel talks about the foot washing. I can remember the first time that I experienced a foot washing personally was when I was in college, and I was part of a student group, and we were on a retreat. And one of the things that they had us do was wash each other's feet, and it was embarrassing.
What an overwhelming experience that must have been.
I mean, my feet were ticklish, and I couldn't stay still, and I was worried. You know, are my feet gonna stink to high heaven, and somebody's washing them for me? It was just it was strange, but yet it was such an incredible example of serving. And that's what Jesus was trying to help them to understand, was that being a disciple, you were focused on helping others more than making sure others helped you.
I wonder how many people would rather wash somebody else's feet than to have their feet washed. For me, I would far prefer serving somebody else than to have somebody do that for me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's embarrassment, but it is an overwhelming sense of beauty in that act.
Yeah. And if we will pay attention when people do an act of service for us, it's incredible. I remember when my mom passed away, it was on early on a Sunday morning, and we decided that we were going to go from where we were living, which was in a suburb of Dallas, back up to the Texas Panhandle to Amarillo for my mom's funeral. And so that morning we were trying to pack everything up to get ready to go to Amarillo, and the piano player for the church where we were attending at the time, she skipped the worship service, and she was at our house helping me and my brother and my sister get our stuff together. Really? And that was such an incredible act of service that, you know, it's been 30 odd years, and I still remember everything that Janine did, and it was such an incredible experience of service. I wonder, is that what the disciples began to understand when Jesus washed their feet?
One of the things about that evening is that we really don't know the backstories of some of the disciples. Is this a brand new thing? Had they experienced the servitude before? Had they been humbled by this before? Or was this something brand new? And that's sort of as we read Scripture and pray and talk and learn and understand more about it, we can get a better sense of that.
Yeah. I wonder, what was that experience really like?
Philip, I know that walking all the roads and just, you get so much dirt on you. Have you ever had so much dirt? It's just, it's terrible.
You would never know that we had our feet washed earlier tonight.
It's exactly right. But what an experience that was. Oh my.
I never expected Jesus to be washing the feet. I I was flabbergasted when I was about 9 years old, and I remember my father came into the house, and then my mother came in right after him, and she had been to the market, and he looked at her and he said, "Honey, come here." And my mother came, and Dad gently took off her sandals, and he washed Mom's feet, and it was so tender and so unexpected. I mean, dads don't do that, but what Jesus did tonight made what my dad did seem, I don't know how to say it. It's like Jesus showed us what great servanthood is supposed to be.
As he was doing it, my mind wandered. And I wondered, would it be easier for me to be washing his feet than him washing my feet?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I found that I think it's true. That I think that I would have been willing to wipe the dust and clean the dust from the road off his feet. But when he did it to me, I felt undeserving.
Oh, absolutely.
Overwhelming.
And I think that's where Simon Peter was coming from. I mean, first he says he doesn't want Jesus to wash him. I mean, I was feeling that. And then when Jesus said, "If I don't wash you, you have no part of me," I was like, but I want to be part of him. And so it's no wonder that Simon then said, "Well, wash all of me." And Jesus said, "No, you don't need your whole body."
Of course, after he said that, did you see the line? Everyone realized that this was it.
It was.
If we were going to show him that we were true believers, then we had to do that too. We had to have it washed away.
We do. And now he said we should be like him, but right now I don't know. I mean, now that he's been arrested and I don't know what happens next, can we really follow his example?
I think so. I hope so. I pray so. But the events of the last 24 hours have me overwhelmed. I mean, to go from what happened just last week with the Palm procession into Jerusalem, and now, Philip, I don't know what to say.
Bartholomew, I don't know what to say either. We live in perilous times.
We live in perilous times.
So, Doug, the heart of Maundy Thursday is often understood to be the institution of the Lord's Supper, what we call communion or Eucharist. And
absolutely.
Have I ever shown you my plate and
I have not.
Yeah.
I've not seen this at all.
So I got these when Deborah and I were up in Michigan. Boy, it's been at least a dozen years since we were up there, and we found a guy who did handmade pottery, and so we commissioned these specifically from him, and I wanted it to be this blue and everything, and I just imagine what it would have been like that if Jesus were serving from something that looked like these.
So when the disciples showed up that night, I'm sure they had anticipation, and I'm sure they had thoughts of what it could be, but I wonder if they had any clue of what was going to happen.
I don't think they did. I think they were expecting to experience the Passover, and Passover has a very scripted feel to it, so everything flows from this to this to this to this, and so when Jesus all of a sudden departed from the script and started talking about a piece of bread being his body and the wine being his blood, they had to have had shocked looks on all their faces.
Well, the table would have been set up as the traditional Seder, so walking into the room, they might have had anticipation and excitement and energy, but I don't know if they would have seen that. I could imagine the disciples just taking a look at it, and as it's going on, they're almost speechless. They have this sense of awe and wonder, and it could have been very quiet. Now, obviously, I don't always embrace the beauty of silence.
Really?
Just saying.
All right.
But
I've learned something about you tonight.
Oh, bless your heart. But that peacefulness, that beauty, that awe and wonder of what was going on must have been overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then when, as you said, the script gets changed and he starts talking about his body and the blood, and
it's mind-boggling to contemplate, and this is a mystery that we still don't quite understand even now. There were a lot of people wanting to have a virtual communion and trying to say that it would work for me to have bread and cup on the video and then invite people at home to have juice and bread and to celebrate communion that way. But I'm just not sure that accurately reflects what Jesus intended. I think he wants us to be gathered. There's physicality to this that trying to do it virtually, we would miss out. So I think as we think about communion, thinking about the emotions of the disciples and how they were together and yet so confused.
I went to a Promise Keepers meeting years ago, and there was a gentleman there that one of the speakers said one of the most profound things I had ever heard. It was talking about freedom, and what he said was that freedom wasn't free, that the cost of freedom is discipline, but the reward of discipline is freedom. So if at this point we have the discipline to do what we need to do, then the reward will be the freedom to once again gather together and meet and partake of the elements.
Yeah.
I did have another thing. So during this time at that Last Supper, Jesus said some profound things towards Peter. Just imagine, you are a faithful believer in Jesus, and he turns to you and says, by the way, you're going to deny me 3 times.
Right. And Peter said, no way, Lord, I would never do that to you.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. And we know it did.
It did.
It did. That is amazing.
And I wonder if the other apostles thought, oh, I'm glad Jesus picked on Peter and not me.
Because I would never, would they say, I would never do that? Or would they say, phew, I'm glad he didn't go after me or tell me I was going to do it?
I wonder what they were thinking through all of that.
Then Philip, then the meal. And the meal. It started off like any other Seder that I've ever been in. The table was beautiful. There were times when nobody was talking. It was just peaceful. It was tranquil. It was beautiful. And then Philip, and then when he stood up, I think about what he said, and sometimes I think I understand it, and sometimes I think it's too much. It's when he stood up.
Well, when he stood up and he took the Passover bread, it's the same bread that we have been eating, I think, since the time of Moses. And then he says, this is his body. Now, think about that. He said it's his body. And it's broken. It's broken for us.
And I was looking at it. I was staring at it. And then I would change my glance and I would look up at Jesus. And I saw love. I saw beauty in his eyes. Still to this moment I do.
And he said, "This is my body broken for you," as he broke the bread. And there was something in me that broke in that moment. It was like everything that I thought I knew about who I am. In a moment, I saw myself through Jesus' eyes, and the feeling that came from that was just, it was like God opened the window of my soul to see how much He loves us.
And as he was washing my feet, I started feeling like there was something new, something special, something that I was to learn. But you're right. This is my body. This is my body. Oh my.
And then we took the cup of Elijah, the cup that's always blessed, and then it's set aside because we're waiting for Elijah, and yet Jesus made it seem as if Elijah had already come, and that this was now a cup to drink from. And then he said that the wine was his blood. It made me think about what he said, nearly 2.5 years ago. Do you remember when we were in Galilee and he started talking about eating his flesh and drinking his blood? And I remember we looked at each other and we said, this is a hard saying. And there were a lot of folks that went away then because they couldn't understand it. And then tonight, when he said, "This is my blood shed for you," I remembered that, and I thought, okay, what is he trying to tell us? Because broken bodies and shed blood, that sounds like violence, and Jesus has been such a peaceful man.
Well, when he said the blood, his blood, I looked at his eyes, and I thought in his eyes I would see fear or dread, or I thought, I don't know what I thought I was going to see, but I didn't think I was going to see what I saw.
It was serene. It was like he knew, and yet he didn't care. No, that's not right. It's not that he didn't care. It's that he cared so much.
Do you think 2.5 years ago, when we first met and gathered around, when we joined the band of the faithful, do you think he knew this was going to happen?
I wonder.
And when I think of the bread and I think of the wine and I see them coming together, I realize he's not saying this and doing this for himself.
You're right.
He's doing it. Can I say he's doing it for us? He's doing it for me.
Yeah.
But what is it he's doing?
I don't know, but after he's been arrested, it makes me wonder. Is his body about to be broken? Are our bodies about to be broken? Bartholomew, what are we going to do? So, Doug, what is the longest time you've ever spent trying to pray?
So, back in my 20s, I always volunteered to be the adult chaperone for the lock-in at the church. So I would teach the whole day, and then we'd meet at 4 in the afternoon. We'd go till 4 the Saturday afternoon. Mm-hmm. And I remembered I thought it would be just a really clever idea to put prayer time interspersed. So it wasn't one massive amount of time, but it was... my 4 o'clock in the morning prayers are not near as deep and useful as prayers from other times.
Yeah. I signed up to pray for an Emmaus walk. And the times that were available to me to sign up were all of those unpopular middle of the night times. And I didn't want to do it, but I felt compelled that I needed to be in prayer. I knew people that were going on that particular walk. And so I committed to get up at 2:30 in the morning and pray for an hour. And it was really, really hard. Do you suppose that's what the disciples are feeling after they finished the Passover meal? Jesus has shocked them with his body and blood statements and Peter's denial statements. And then he says, hey, we're going to go to the garden and pray.
Well, if you think about what their day was before that, they had all the preparations for the Seder in the first place. Mm-hmm. And the rules said that you had to already be cooking the lamb by 3 o'clock, which meant they had all the time before that to start preparing everything. They were probably 16, 17-hour a day.
Probably.
And then Jesus says, after one of the most emotional nights of their life, says, hey, hang loose, pray, stay awake, have a good time, I'll be back. What an overwhelming thought that is.
Yeah. And, he came back to them 3 times saying, wake up and pray. And each time they were sleepy. But, I feel a lot of empathy for them because I can see how easy it is for us. Our spirits may be willing, but our human flesh is weak. And in that moment, they were experiencing, I would guess, some weakness.
Not only that, but emotionally, they had to have been spent. So not only were they physically tired, sometimes, you know what it's like when you're just mentally, you've been hit with so much stuff. In fact, all this stuff with the COVID-19, every day we're being hit with numbers and warnings and experiences. We are mentally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
As well as physically. And this is a trying time for everyone. And I just imagine as they were going out into the garden, say, stay awake, it was maybe first quiet. It could have been a very nice evening. They could have been listening to the birds. They would have just quietly sat down, and I could see how they could have fallen asleep very easily.
And then suddenly they are jolted awake by what has to be one of the most terrifying things. There's Judas surrounded with Roman soldiers and temple guards, and they come marching into the garden, and Judas walks up and kisses Jesus on the cheek, and then they start grabbing him.
And that was it. That he was hauled off. The disciples had to have been scared to death, pretty ticked off at Judas, concerned about what happens next. And when they fell asleep, did they miss something? Or could they have stopped this? Could they have prevented this? Why didn't they know that it was going to be Judas? Why couldn't they have moved Jesus to another place? They could have even felt guilty that it all occurred in front of them.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it was like to be there when Jesus was arrested. So when all of a sudden Judas showed up with all those soldiers from the Roman guard and the temple, it was like the high priest and Pilate had joined forces, and who would have ever thought that could happen?
And Jesus kept preaching to us love and kindness and respect, and that was mad. 2.5 years ago, you and I both met Judas, and he seemed just fine. He was pretty detail-oriented, and he helped keep...
I loved Judas. He was the one guy who could always make sure we laughed when we were afraid.
It was just...
He always knew what to say and how to say it, and yet, he's the one who betrayed our master.
Remember when Jesus at the Seder said, "What if you will betray me tonight?" And we were all looking around. We didn't have a clue. We didn't know who it was.
No, I even wondered, could I do it? Could I have been the one?
I thought I was faithful and holy and true and just, and then I fall asleep. And now I'm running for my life. I'm not even quite sure I'm the person I thought I was.
I mean, the soldiers came, and they grabbed Jesus, and I don't know what hit me, but it was like I had all of this sudden fearful energy, and it was either punch somebody in the face, which I knew I couldn't do because I would have been taken and in prison, and so I ran. I didn't know what else to do but to run and to keep running, and I feel like even though we're resting under this tree, I haven't stopped running yet.
So, remember when I was talking about how peaceful things were?
Yeah.
That the entire meal was this just beautiful tapestry of words and silence and meaningful message and prayer. And we go into the garden, and it's so soft and quiet we fall asleep. But when I heard the crashing of the metal from the centurions hitting the brick pavement, I was fearful. Honestly, I was fearful for my life first.
Absolutely.
What is it that I have done? What is it? And then suddenly they go after Jesus.
You know, I knew that he had made enemies, but I didn't expect this. We should have known, though. They have been trying to trap Jesus for months. We should have known. We shouldn't be surprised. And yet, Bartholomew, here we are, in shock, in fear, uncertainty.
But, my brother, I want to share with you that when Jesus was being taken away, he turned back. And when he turned back, I would have had the eyes of fear and just being fearful for my life. And he turns around and he has that same look of love. Of love. And then the feeling I had was the same feeling I had when he was washing my feet. That I didn't deserve this. And there he goes. He's walking out the door. He's in cuffs. He's in chains, being violently taken away. And here I am. I've given everything I have to this man, and there's nothing I can do. Maybe that's how we feel right now. That there's nothing we can do. I don't know if I'm more fearful for my life or more fearful for his life.
I'm fearful for both. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what tomorrow brings. We're a few hours from sunrise.
Maybe we should go somewhere. This might not be safe.
We should go. Be at peace, my friend, as best you can.
And with you, my brother.
So they're stuck on Thursday night into Friday morning with Jesus being arrested. They're all scattered. They might have come together in twos and threes, but the disciples at this point have to be so overwhelmed and afraid for their lives and thinking that it's only a matter of time before they're all gathered up and they're all sitting in the same prison cells awaiting whatever the outcome of Jesus, they've got to be expecting that too.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that happens right now that I find fascinating is that when Jesus asked them to stay awake and they fell asleep, and they did it 3 times, then Judas comes in, the centurions come in, Jesus is taken away. Now they can't sleep.
Right.
That the events of the evening are now so overwhelming. So when Jesus asked them just to simply stay awake, they couldn't. But when this sensationalistic set of events occurs, that's what wakes me. I see that lining up very much so with our modern society. That we are attracted to these sensationalistic, overwhelming things. It must have been horrific for the disciples.
Yeah. But we know something that they didn't know. We know that Jesus is going to be put on trial. We know that Jesus is going to be hung on the cross. We know that Jesus is going to die. But we also know that that's not the end of the story. And so as we think about what happens next, it's Good Friday. And we can experience the passion of Christ and what he was willing to do, and let that penetrate us. That's really what our next event, Good Friday, is going to be all about.
It is. I think one of the things that we have to be careful about is, just as the disciples, doing too much of a historical approach. What could I have done? Why didn't I see it? How could these things be happening? How come the Sanhedrin turned against us? How come the leaders of our community now have stabbed us in the back? And instead, we transfer our thoughts and prayers and our minds towards the cross. I think that can be very significant for us to discover.
I like that. And Easter is still coming.
Yes, it is.